A thriving economy is vital to allow society to prosper and to give residents the opportunity to realize their dreams and ambitions. With a few surprises along the way, here are the top 15 richest countries by GDP per capita as of 2019. Number 15. Australia, $54,763. The country of Australia is made up of the largest landmass of the continent it's in, along with a number of smaller islands, including Tasmania. It's absolutely enormous, and it's actually the sixth largest country on Earth, covering an area of just under 3 million square miles. Despite this size, large swaths of the country are uninhabitable, and the population of around 26 million people mainly live in coastal regions, particularly to the east. Australia's economy is one of the strongest in the world, thanks in large part to the huge volumes of natural resources that it has. This has allowed the development of industry based on export of commodities, as opposed to one of manufacturing. And while this means the country is reliant on importing more than it exports, the services that underpin the economy means it's incredibly resilient. Australia was, for example, the only large economy that didn't suffer a recession in the wake of the financial crisis in 2008, and it was only because its trading partners started struggling that growth began to slow. With an unemployment rate of 5.3%, and as one of the most financially successful countries in the region, the GDP per capita in Australia is around $54,763, making it easily one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Number 14. Denmark, $60,657. As a part of Scandinavia, Denmark is made up of the main peninsula along with 443 islands off its eastern coast. It covers a total area of approximately 16,580 square miles, but if you take into account the fact that Greenland and the Faroe Islands are autonomous territories as a part of Denmark, the size majorly increases to more than 850,000 square miles. The country has one of the highest proportions of residents with a higher education qualification, and also has the highest minimum wage in the world, something that's happened not because of government policy, but because of the actions of trade unions. Denmark used to be mainly reliant on agriculture, but since the Second World War there's been a focus on increasing the industrial and service sectors, and now it's a world leader in industries like pharmaceuticals, the manufacture of wind turbines, medical equipment, and transportation infrastructure. Because of this and its membership of the European Union that gives tariff-free access to a market of more than 500 million customers, it's allowed the economy to thrive, especially as citizens voted to reject the adoption of the euro and retain the krona, meaning the Danish government can set monetary policy in a way that other European countries cannot. This means that with a GDP per capita of $60,657 and with an economy that's built around sharing the wealth out more than most, Danish citizens are some of the most affluent on Earth. Number 13. Singapore, $64,103. Singapore is one of the world's few remaining self-governing city-states and is on a main island along with 64 smaller ones that are off the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula. Originally founded as a trading outpost for the British Empire in 1819, it gained independence in 1959, and despite facing challenges at first, it's now going from strength to strength. Regarded as one of the 4 Asian tiger economies, it's the only Asian country and one of the very few countries worldwide that have a AAA credit rating from the 3 main agencies. Its geographical position means it's a great launchpad to access the economies of the countries in the region, and it's for this reason that more than 7,000 multinational corporations have a significant presence there. With competitive tax rates and a competitive marketplace, there's great demand for a skilled workforce, and 44% of the people that are employed there aren't originally from Singapore. Amazingly, this means the country has the highest proportion of millionaires on Earth, with an estimated 1 in 6 households having at least $1 million worth of disposable income. A figure that doesn't take into account assets like properties and businesses. Of course, this means that it's one of the most expensive places to live, but with a GDP per capita of $64,103, its 5.7 million residents are able to afford this. Number 12. Qatar, $64,782. Located on the Qatar Peninsula on the northern edge of Saudi Arabia, Qatar is the 35th smallest country in the world, covering an area of just 4,400 square miles. It has a population of 2.6 million people, 313,000 of whom are Qatari citizens. But this isn't at all a measure of the country's wealth, because it happens to sit upon the world's 3rd largest reserves of natural gas and oil. This has meant that the House of Tani, which has ruled the country since the independence in 1868, has been able to drill this natural resource and use the funds it generates for massive development. Relying heavily on a foreign workforce, the country has more than 13% of the global supply of fossil fuels, and as such, not a single resident is considered to live below the poverty line, with a GDP per capita of $64,782. Of course, now nations around the world are looking at ways to derive energy by other means. Qatari leaders are finding ways to move the economy on and make the nation a business and entertainment center. One of the first steps of doing this will be by hosting the World Soccer Cup in 2022, and it's hoped by that putting the country on the world stage, it'll continue to be wealthy long after the oil and gas reserves have lost their value. Number 11. United States, $65,134. Covering an area of 3.8 million square miles, and with a population of over 330 million people, the United States of America is both the third largest and the third most populous country in the world. It also has easily the largest economy in the world, generating $22.7 trillion each year, which is the equivalent to almost a quarter of the planet's entire economic output. This is fueled by the fact that the US dollar is the main reserve currency on Earth, and it's an open market economy that has led to the country being the largest importer of goods, as well as the second largest exporter. The US gained its dominant place in the world as a result of the vast natural resources across the country, such as oil and gas, and the economy grew through agriculture, and in recent decades by technological innovation. Not only does the US have the two largest stock exchanges in the world, but it's also where 121 of the world's largest 500 companies are based, and is home to the highest number of billionaires in the world. This all gives a GDP per capita figure of $65,134. But because of the way the economy is set up and the lack of employment protections, such as it being the only advanced economy that doesn't guarantee paid vacations to employees or family leave, it means that the wealth is far from being spread evenly, and allows for some people to generate huge amounts of wealth while others have to survive well below the poverty line. Number 10. Iceland, $71,345. Located in the North Atlantic Ocean, Iceland is one of the largest but most sparsely populated countries in Europe. Known as the land of volcanoes and ice, it covers an area of 40,000 square miles, but has just over 357,000 residents. 40% of exports and 7% of jobs in Iceland are because of the fishing industry, and it's also become a world leader in green energy. By harnessing hydroelectric and geothermal energy, the economy has been able to diversify in recent decades without being so reliant on traditional fossil fuels, and now has successful biotech, finance, and technology-based industries. Tourism, too, is a vital part of Iceland's economy, and in a normal year there will be 3 times as many visitors as there are residents, and the service industry makes up about 70% of the GDP. With a GDP per capita figure of $71,345, it has a social welfare system based on the one used by Nordic countries that provide free health care and college education to every resident, which helps to spread this wealth out more evenly, and it's intended to ensure every person is afforded the opportunities they need to succeed in life. Number 9. Norway, $74,986. Norway is the furthest west of the Scandinavian countries and is made up of the main landmass along with an Arctic archipelago and several other islands around the world. First recognized as a country more than 1,000 years ago, it's one of the most joyous places on Earth, regularly topping the list of the World Happiness Index. It covers an area of roughly 148,000 square miles and has a population of just under 5.5 million people. It's a place with more natural resources than most, with over 25% of the economy derived from the extraction of fossil fuels, and 30% of the workforce being employed by the government itself. One of the reasons why Norway is such a wealthy country is that authorities have always used the funds obtained from the country's resources to pay into the government pension fund, which is the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. It's currently valued at more than $1 trillion, which is not only the equivalent to 2.5 times Norway's annual GDP, but is equal to $190,000 per resident. This fund alone controls 1% of the publicly traded shares around the world, and the profits made are reinvested back into national infrastructure. With a comprehensive social security system and with a GDP per capita of $74,986, it's no wonder why Norwegians are so happy. We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Ireland, $81,637. The Republic of Ireland, which is made up of the southernmost 26 of the 32 counties of the island of Ireland, covers an area of approximately 27,000 square miles and has a population of around 5 million people. Amazingly, more than 40% of the residents live in the wider area around the country's capital city, Dublin, which leaves the rest of the country relatively sparsely populated. As a part of the European Union and with the euro as its currency, industry in Ireland has access to a much wider tariff-free customer base. This, coupled with its low business tax rates, means that Ireland is often chosen by large multinational companies as a place to base their operations. This provides jobs for a quarter of the workforce and generates more than 80% of business taxes. To give an example of how important this is to Ireland's economy, of the 20 largest companies that operate there, 14 are ones that are US-based. This taxation policy that attracts companies like these have, however, come under fire in recent years, and there's concern within Ireland that if they're forced to change the rates so they're more in line with the rest of Europe and the world, then it could be incredibly costly. With recent agreements seemingly trying to do just that, Ireland might not remain as one of the top countries when measuring GDP per capita, but for the moment, it is with a figure of $81,637. Number 7. Macau, $84,097. While it's officially part of China, the city of Macau, which is on an island in the Pearl River Delta, is designated as a special administrative region, so is allowed to make its own fiscal policies and is measured separately from the rest of China. Covering an area of just 44.5 square miles and with a population of around 680,000 people, it is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Because of its legal separation from mainland China, things are allowed in Macau that are more restricted elsewhere, and it's their presence that means the city is able to generate huge income. In particular, it's become a resort city that's reliant on casino gaming, and is so successful that gaming in Macau is worth over 7 times that of Las Vegas. 80% of the government funding comes from gambling, with 68% of visitors for that purpose coming from mainland China. This is the main reason why the GDP per capita is $84,097. Again, however, this is not all indicative of the financial experiences of most residents, because the wealth inequality is one of the largest you'll find anywhere. The vast majority of the income that's generated goes to just a few owners of corporations, while the remaining residents are reliant on jobs at the casinos to purchase food and goods, all of which have to be imported from Hong Kong. Number 6. Switzerland, $85,135. Located in the center of Europe and borders with 5 other countries, Switzerland is mainly an alpine country that covers an area of about 15,900 square miles. It's split up into 26 regions, which are known as cantons, and have around 8.5 million residents, each of which speaks one of or several of the country's 4 official languages. First established as a country in 1291, it's famed for its neutrality when it comes to world politics, and has a historic banking sector. Switzerland's economy is far broader than just financial institutions, though, with a heavy reliance on the manufacturing of specialist products such as scientific and medical instruments, agriculture, and increasingly services. It's a hub for multinational companies, tourism, and insurance, which often results in it being said to have one of the most stable and resilient economies in the world. With relatively low tax rates and the majority of industry in private hands, there's a much lower unemployment rate in Switzerland than in the surrounding countries, and it's in the top 20 countries when ranked by income equality. With a GDP per capita of $85,135 and a relatively low percentage of residents living below the poverty line, the Swiss economy continues to grow and is expected to rise higher up the list in the coming years. Number 5. Cayman Islands, $92,692. The Cayman Islands is a self-governing British overseas territory that's made up of 3 main islands. It covers an area of just 102 square miles and has a population of around 66,000 people. So at first glance, you wouldn't expect it to be one of the world's financial powerhouses. This country has, however, become synonymous with offshore tax havens, and is one of the most favored places in the world for corporations and wealthy individuals to store their assets because of the extremely low tax rates. In fact, residents don't pay any tax themselves on earnings, properties, or capital gains, with the only rates being levied on tourism, goods that are imported, and financial transactions. There are currently more than 100,000 companies registered in the Caymans, which is almost 2 for every person that lives there. For those that don't work in finance, there's plenty of jobs in tourism, which means that the unemployment rate is just 4%, and the average income of residents is around $56,000 per year. With a GDP per capita of $92,692, it is one of the wealthiest countries in the Caribbean and offers the highest standard of living to residents in the Caribbean too. Number 4. Luxembourg, $115,481. Luxembourg is in Western Europe, where it's bordered on all sides by Belgium, Germany, and France. As part of the European Union, and with its capital Luxembourg City being the headquarters of the European Court of Justice, the country is so connected with those around it that there are 3 official languages: French, German, and Luxembourgish. It is one of the smallest countries in Europe, covering an area of just 998 square miles, and has a population of just over 620,000 people, which makes it one of the least populous of the European countries as well. Despite its size, Luxembourg has one of the strongest economies in the world, something that's made possible by its banking secrecy laws that have led to it becoming a tax haven, as well as a thriving industrial sector. Keen to move away from such reliance on these 2 areas, there's been a particular drive in recent years to attract technology startups to the country, with the hope that it'll become a center for innovation in the coming decades, as a way to counteract the inevitable clampdown on tax havens. Unsurprisingly, Luxembourg is entwined within the financial institutions of Europe, and its position at the center of the reinsurance market, as well as being the second-largest investment fund center in the world after the US, means that the GDP per capita of $115,481 is only likely to rise over the next few years. Number 3. Bermuda, $117,768. The island of Bermuda is a self-governing British overseas territory in the North Atlantic Ocean, 956 miles north of the British Virgin Islands. It's made up of 181 islands, with the largest being called the Main Island, and covering an area of about 20.5 square miles. It has a population of around 71,000 people. There are 2 main sectors that underpin the Bermudan economy, 85% of which is related to banking, with 5% due to tourism. The country has positioned itself as an offshore financial center, and to do this has minimal tax rates on businesses and personal income, but eye-watering consumption tax rates to make up for this. The lack of corporate tax makes it an ideal place for companies, particularly those based in the US, to keep wealth that's been generated elsewhere, and famously led to Google transferring $10 billion to accounts there as a part of a scheme to avoid paying $2 billion worth of tax. With 15,000 companies registered there, most of which don't have any office space at all, it's become a popular place for wealthy individuals to live too, with an average property said to be worth as much as $1.5 million. While the GDP per capita works out as $117,768, there's a serious wealth divide between natural-born residents on the island and those that have moved there. But it's proof that a country can run itself with no corporate taxes and still be able to provide healthcare, education, and security to its inhabitants. Number 2. Liechtenstein, $179,258. The Principality of Liechtenstein is a microstate that's in the Alps in Central Europe, and it's bordered by Switzerland and Austria. It's the 4th smallest country in the continent, covering an area of just 62 square miles, and it has one of the smallest populations too, with just 38,700 residents. Once regarded as a billionaire's tax haven, Liechtenstein's economy is based on the banking sector, but efforts have been made in recent years to align the tax rates with the rest of the world, so it's not currently blacklisted like some other havens are. It does, however, still have more registered companies than there are residents, and because the country is so reliant on trade and connections with Switzerland, it uses the Swiss franc as its official currency. Outside of banking, there's also a thriving industry in electronics, textiles, and specialist manufacturing, which means that the unemployment rate in the country is unusually low at just 1.5%. With a GDP per capita figure of $179,258, the average worker in the country certainly doesn't see anywhere near this amount in their wage packet, but they do benefit from extremely good public services and have one of the highest life expectancies in Europe. Number 1. Monaco, $190,532. Monaco is probably most well known for being the playground of the rich and famous, where the most prestigious event on the Formula One race calendar is held every year. The micro-state, which is on the French Riviera near to the border with Italy, is only 0.8 square miles, but it's just under 39,000 residents, of which fewer than 10,000 are Monegasque nationals. They are probably the wealthiest collection of people on Earth. Monaco has the lowest poverty rate in the world, mainly because you need to be extraordinarily rich to be able to live there, and the country relies on a 48,000-person workforce who travel from France and Italy each day. It's in Monaco, for example, that you'll find the world's most expensive apartment, which cost $335 million in 2016, and it's regularly rated as having the most overall expensive real estate market on the planet. There are two main industries that underpin Monaco's economy: banking and tourism. For tourists, the draw is the climate and the allure of the place, along with the most relaxed gambling regulations in all of Europe. And for wealthy individuals and corporations, the attraction is the unique tax system, which doesn't tax any personal income, but instead has high VAT rates and social insurance taxes. This means the GDP per capita in the country is $190,532, by far the highest in the world, and a record that it's held for a very long time. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.